longest time, the story India told itself about its population was a story of fear. Too many people, too few resources. A country growing faster than it could feed itself. The phrase population explosion was everywhere. Now, that story is officially over. But why? Because the latest National Family Health Survey, NFHS 6, has just been released. And it tells us something that would have sounded impossible a generation ago. India's total fertility rate has fallen to 1.9. Let me explain what that number means and why it changes how we should think about our future. The total fertility rate is simply the average number of children a woman is expected to have in her lifetime. Demographers use a benchmark called replacement level, which is 2.1. At that level, a population roughly replaces itself, no growth, no decline. India is now at 1.9, which means we have fallen below that replacement level. Our population is still rising for now, but the rate of growth is slowing fast, and the long-term direction is clear. So the conversation has to change as well. The old worry was that India had too many young people. The new question is, what happens when India starts to grow old? And the first thing to understand is that there is no single India when it comes to fertility. The national number of 1.9 hides a sharp divide between various regions of the country. At the higher end, you have states like Bihar at 2.9, Uttar Pradesh at 2.6, Madhya Pradesh at 2.4, Rajasthan at 2.3 and Chhattisgarh at 2.2. These are states that are still adding population and where the fertility rate sits above the replacement mark. At the other end, the picture is completely different. You've got the national capital. Delhi is down to 1.2. Kerala, Tamil Nadu and West Bengal are all around 1.3. Maharashtra is at 1.4. These are numbers you associate with aging societies in East Asia and Europe, not with the popular image of India. So we are really two countries in one. A younger, faster growing north and center and a richer, rapidly aging south and west. Hold on to that divide because it sits underneath almost every challenge we are now going to be discussing. Because why is this happening? The fall in fertility is not the result of a single thing. It is several changes happening together simultaneously. It is being driven largely by women's empowerment, greater autonomy, higher literacy, and widespread digital access. That means women are choosing to delay childbirth. Marriages are happening later in life, which naturally shortens reproductive windows. At the same time, better access to family planning and contraception has given couples real control over their choices. There is also a major health triumph here because child survival rates and medical outcomes have drastically improved. Families no longer feel the practical need to have more children. And finally, the raw economic reality that can't be ignored. The sheer cost of raising, housing and educating a child today is encouraging couples to keep their families small. But this demographic dip brings massive unprecedented challenges as well. India now risks getting old before it gets rich. We are facing a severe regional imbalance where faster growing states lag behind economically, whilst our richest states are aging the fastest. And this could soon trigger severe labor shortages in key economic sectors that rely on young workers. It will also create intense fiscal pressures as a rapidly expanding elderly population will demand massive investments in healthcare, in geriatric care, and social security. Perhaps the most explosive fallout will be political. When the next delimitation happens, parliamentary seats and central tax funds are scheduled to be redistributed based on population. This sets up a dangerous federal crisis as well. States that successfully implemented family planning stand to lose political representation and financial rewards, effectively penalizing them for their progress. And if we want to navigate this lower fertility future, we cannot afford to fear it. We must adapt to it. This means boosting women's workforce participation to offset the upcoming labor gaps and aggressively skilling our current youth for a high productivity economy. We must build a robust elder care system and expand universal social security. And most importantly, we must strengthen our cooperative federalism to ensure that states are protected, not punished, for stabilizing their population. Two very esteemed panelists with us on the broadcast, and the big questions that we're asking tonight. If a falling fertility rate is a sign of development, why does it leave us with so many problems to solve, and are we ready to solve them? India is really two demographic countries in one. Can a single national policy work for a Bihar at 2.9 and a Delhi and Maharashtra at 1.2 and 1.4 respectively, or do we need very different approaches for different states? We keep saying India could get old before it gets rich. How many years do we realistically have to fix this? And what happens if we miss that window? Poonam Mutreja, Executive Director, Population Foundation of India, with us on the broadcast, and Mithali Nikore, Founder and Chief Economist, Nikore Associates. Mithali, let's get the snowball rolling here quickly. Don't have much time. For decades, India has worried about this population explosion. Suddenly, it's not a problem. Today, our fertility rate is below replacement level. Now, from that problem, has this turned into an actual crisis, or is India simply entering the next stage of economic developments? And of course, the two demographies in a single country, that aspect. Throw some light on that as well.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot for having me on the show and for this discussion. See, firstly, I just feel that there's a lot of alarmist discourse that has been spread by people like Elon Musk around the falling
Yeah.
TFR because they're zooming in on one rate.
Yeah.
They're constantly zooming in on this total fertility rate, which is the average number of births that a woman is having. See, there are countries which have a TFR of 5 or 6, but the survival rate of children and the health crisis in those countries means that many of them actually don't even reach the age of 2 or 3 years. And that's why the TFR is higher, because if you have 5 or 6 children, maybe you only 3 or 4 will survive. We are not that kind of economy anymore. We are
Yeah.
not that
Yeah.
kind of society anymore. And I think for India, the focus has to be the skilling of our population. We create high productivity workers, we create high innovation economies, we create conditions for women to enter the workforce. The care economy is the single most important investment that India can make. At Nikor Associates, we have estimated, along with the Economic Advisory Council of the Prime Minister, that the care economy can unlock 15 to 17% of the GDP in this country once we bring in more and more private
Wow.
sector innovation into the care economy through childcare, elder care, long term care of highly dependent adults, for persons with disability. So, very honestly, there's a huge market out there to be tapped. And I think this is the time for, innovative Indians, especially women, to come into the workforce, tap that market, and really create a care workforce and a care economy for the world. We can even earn foreign exchange out of it.
All right, all right. Ms. Mutreja, let me come to you real quickly. India's fertility story, it's not uniform. Let's throw some light on that as well. Are we really talking about one India or multiple demographic realities like I presented in the introduction? States like Bihar and Uttar Pradesh remain above the replacement level, whilst several southern states and the national capital far below it.
So, absolutely. First of all, I want to say, Mithali, there's everything you have said. I totally not only agree with, but welcome. As far as India is concerned, it's many, if you look at the NFHS recent data, it's many stories, in fact, almost 30, more than 30 stories in one country. So, if you look at fertility rates too, like it was said in your introduction, there are states that have 2.6 and 2.8, like Bihar, UP, Meghalaya. And then, if you look at not only the population, these TFR, but if you look at the unmet need for family planning, it goes as high as 20 in Meghalaya, 13 in Bihar, 12 in UP. We still have an unmet need for family planning. Two, we have a situation where we have a very large young population, 370 million young people. Either they're at a reproductive age or they will be reaching a reproductive age. And even if everyone has one child, which I am sure everyone's not going to have one child if we don't have look after our population. Many women are going to choose not to even have one child, but if they have even one child, our population will continue to increase till 2060, and then the real decline will start. And sometime in the next century, 2011, 2100, we are going to start having to worry. But at this point of time, if we take action, much of what Mithali said, and also for us to start planning for our population, planning for aging, look at issues like jobs. You know, it's not just jobs, it's also skilling, and it's also having a healthy, skilled population.
That's right.
What kind of productivity will India have if 60% of women are
Yeah,
anemic
yeah,
and
yeah.
66% of our children are anemic? These are the things to worry about. All we do is count numbers, alarm on the other side that there are too many children happening overnight.
Yeah.
How can you justify a country's understanding, whether it is from an economic point of view or a demographic point of view or any point of view, that you have a country that's panicking in totally opposite directions?
Yeah.
It's almost like I feel we are schizophrenic. Instead of focusing on seeing, look at the urban rural differentials.
Yeah.
Why do we have 1.6 population in cities and in rural areas, in urban areas, and in rural areas it is still 2.1?
You're
And why
absolutely
don't
right,
we
ma'am. You're
worry
absolutely
about
right. I think you hit the nail
migration?
on the head when you say that these are 30 different stories in one go. And what good is that demographic dividend when we really can't talk about upskilling and skilling in the right way, in the right manner? Mitali, I mean, Ms. Mutreja put some really credible points on the table. And everywhere we look, you know, the young Indians, of course, in that reproductive age, like Madam just said, they're delaying marriage, they're delaying parenthood, choosing to have just one child. So, on the Libra scales, on one side, you've got the demographic dividend, and then on the other, you've got agency, you've got education, you've got, you know, better contraceptives. How much of this is a lifestyle choice, and how much of this is actually being driven by economic pressures like housing, childcare, the education costs, and so forth?
No, absolutely, Kabir. Of course, I agree with ma'am fully. And see, the simple thing is, at the end of the day, we have been saying this for years. The career clock and the biological clock of women are totally at odds with each other. At the time when you are expected to go do internships, build your career, build your
Yep.
name for yourself in your industry, you are your most fertile. And then after that, when you are losing your fertility, then suddenly everybody starts warning you, oh my God, if you don't have a child now, you'll never be able to. See, at the end of the day, firstly, I feel like this alarmist attitude again should calm down, because look at Deepika Padukone. She's having her second child at 40. She's a superstar. And she has, shown us that you can have it all. Of course, you have to be a superstar to do it. But on a serious note, we
And
need
quite rich at that,
workplaces,
if I could add
and
that.
quite rich at that. Her
Yeah.
care economy is clearly working for her. But for the normal earthlings like us, what we need is for workplaces to start understanding that they are employing families, and for men to start understanding that if they don't pick up the work that they need to do in the house, then they cannot create a family out of thin air. Women are not living to service just the dream of a family any longer. Men have to put in the work. In India, currently, women
Certainly.
perform 5.6 hours of unpaid care work every day. Men do 30 minutes. So, very honestly, all of those rotis are not going to make themselves. All of the, diapers are not going to change themselves.
Yeah.
It has to now be a situation where men come forward and say, I want to enjoy having a family. And for enjoying a family, I have to pitch in to the work that is required to have a family. And I think that is the real change that we need in our society.
Certainly, certainly. I hope that the viewers do take on from that, and that operative portion. Let's cut that out and put it out on social media as well. Mithali, many thanks for that. Ms. Mutrecha, you see, if the real challenge ahead is not population growth, let's put aside the alarm. But the population that is aging. We will soon have an aging population, an old population. What should the government now be focusing on? Should there be, a departure on what kind of policies we're bringing to the table right now? Is it going? Is the focus? Does the focus now need to shift towards elder care, healthcare systems, pensions, women's workforce participation? Of course, that's something that Mitali also touched upon just a short while ago.
So It's the population fear that's bringing this critical issue of social security for our citizens, especially the aged population, who are going through a very difficult time, especially the poor, in a country where we have no social security. And the joint family system is going very quickly far behind us. So in a situation like that, we should have been planning instead of we now are going to panic. We need a lot of investment in our elderly, but geriatric care in India is at not even at a nascent stage, except for states like Kerala. We needed geriatric care for both the rich, the poor, the middle class. We didn't do anything. Second, social security. I don't see why the elderly population has been sitting on dharna for years and nobody goes to see them because they don't even have 500 rupees or 300 rupees for their medication. So it is time. No civilized society,
Yep.
no country which claims to be a Vishwa Guru, a third in economy, we're going to be number one sometime to come. We keep aspiring. Can we aspire for that without being a civilized society that takes care of its people, that has zero social security? We keep saying our GDP growth is, well, whether it's more or less, we don't know. The economists will work that out. But we need to invest
Yes, you're absolutely right, ma'am.
aged, where they can work. We're talking about worrying about the workforce. People at 60 have another 15, good 15 to 20 years to contribute to work. There
Yep, yep,
are,
yep.
we have to create post retirement, not just jobs, but skilling. If we are smart, then community participation in looking after the aged, volunteering. I can assure you there'll be large number of young people, middle-aged people who will come out to look after. Let's it's about the culture of caring, whether it's the care economy for the women, the elderly. We have to get serious about care
You're
economy
absolutely right, ma'am. I've
as
completely run
well
out of
as
time here.
caring.
This has been a great and a riveting discussion. Of course, there are several other aspects that one has to take a look at. I did want to talk about, whether we were going to grow old without getting rich, because that's the, entire curve that we see across other economies as well. They first get rich and then they start getting old. Is that not going to happen with us? That's something to take a look at. And then there's the entire delimitation fight, the politics of identity that's going to come
The
into play as well.
elephant in
But
the
I'm
room.
glad that we did not touch upon that at the moment. Just for now, I think the biggest takeaways is that we can shut off those alarm bells, and we've got a massively and quite a strong population. Let's try to focus on that, and there are great things to come on that particular front.